All right, this is video part 7 of the Tomy talk in action disassembly of the long train. And before we get started, I got to talk to you about this, about we're going to expand that up a little bit. And we're going to talk about that blade and specifically the piece of sandpaper that I talked to you earlier today about on the other video. All right, when you're running your train around the track and you hear brop, 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 that is the activation assembly bouncing on the little activation tracks. And when they do that, you got some voltage coming down on this wire meeting across there, and when it connects, you get a microscopic spark. All right, where you get a microscopic spark is fire, and where you got fire, you got smoke, and where you got smoke, you got soot. And that soot's made out of carbon. And that carbon is an insulator. So after 20 years of that thing bouncing up and down and making little sparks, you get soot all over the contacts right there. All over those contacts. And so what you do is you use this sandpaper to rub lightly on those contacts to clean them off. And they get nice and clean. You can see them shining right now. That's nice and clean. That's about as clean as you're going to get them. All right, and that's that. So that's what that little sandpaper's for. Next thing we got to do, we got to put the assembly back together. So let's zoom back out. All right, so we take the actuator arm assembly housing, put it right there. Then take this part, the other side of the clamshell, and put that on there. There, we got our clamshell together. All right, our little tiny screw. Put it on there. All right, now come up with the screwdriver. Tighten it down. Remember not to do too tight. You want to just make it snug. And snug is good. All right, now we got that together. All right, now you got to pick the activation arm, and you got to put it back inside the assembly housing. And you want to take this end and put it underneath there. Slide it right underneath there, put that tab underneath there, and then line those back up, okay, with those holes. All right, now we got to take our pivot, activation arm pivot, put it in its slot right there. All right, now slide the housing assembly back down on top of the pivot. Leave it right about there. Now we got to get that activation housing spring, put the long end. You got a short end and a long end. Take the long end, put it back inside the little hole that I showed you on the other video. Okay, flip it over. All right, and let the pivot go through the loop of the spring. Okay, put it in its hole. And there we go, just like that. Okay, looking pretty good right now. All right, so now we got to line it all up. Now the best thing to do is when you try to get in there, see that the off and on switch gear, put the off and on switch all the way forward and let that gear drop to the bottom so it's sitting nice and flat. Now what you need to do right here is to move the whole arm forward so you can get the spring, the short end of the spring inside. There we go. We got it. So you're still got spring. There's still spring to it. Okay. Now we got to put our screws in the housing. Got a little friend down there flying around. Okay, that's one. There's 3 screws here, holding this all together. Remember, never to over tight. Snug is good. 1, 2. Okay. And then this one goes down right there. Okay, now the speaker goes back into its little spot. Okay, now there we go. There's the frame, and here's the wheels. Okay, put the traction rods in their little slots. Get one in and the other one pops out. There we go. Yep. Okay, that's there. All right, now take the whole thing or come around over on this side. All right, rotate it around. Put the speaker in this little spot. There we go. All right, it fell in. Activation arm is popping back and forth. Well, let's put our 2 screws in here to hold down the motor assembly to the frame. Okay, that's one. And then the last one to hold the motor down goes right here. Okay. Alrighty. Now we're going to put our weights in. The rear weight goes back here. Oh, first of all, we got to put the coupler on, and then the rear weight goes in here. There we go. And then the engine rotated around over here. Then the engine weight goes right here. Now you got to be careful because this white wire likes to get caught underneath it. And I got to get that out of there so it won't damage that solder joint right there. There we go. Alrighty, that's all the way where it needs to be. And then the last weight we're going to put in is the front axle weight right there. And we're here. That's going to conclude today's video, and we'll move on to part 8.